The Martian. I finally saw it over a week after it came out. I really need to get better on these things, but that's besides the point right now. My laziness doesn't quite equate to the greatness that is The Martian. So let's talk about that. And also the fact that that's three immediate reaction reviews in a row about good movies. That is awesome. I love the fall. Summer's fine, it's lots of fun, but the fall is when lots of the good movies start coming out. Not all the time. Actually, I'd say there's quite a few bad fall movies, but there tends to be quite a few good ones, too. We'll see how long this track record continues, though, considering I'm about to go see Pan. Let's not talk about that right now. The Martian. It's great. It's well acted. It's a beautifully shot. Like, this is a gorgeous movie. I don't know how much of it was CG and how much of it was achieved practically, but this movie looks beautiful. And Ridley Scott, I love that guy. Like, he has so many good movies in my book. And you know what? I even defend Prometheus. And you know what? Come at me for that one if you want to take some shots. But yeah, this movie is really good. It's not perfect. I got a couple of little issues with it. Like, it's in terms of its story, it's a fairly standard disaster movie. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, because if you whittle your story down to something relatively simple, then all you really need to do is execute it really well, and you have a story that people can relate to, people can follow, and people will like. And there's nothing really wrong with that, especially when you're telling the story this well, because Ridley Scott is a great director, and the actors in this movie are so good, and there's so many good ones. Matt Damon, Donald Glover, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Jeff Daniels, Kate Mara, Kristen Wiig, Michael Pena. Oh my god, have you guys ever looked at Michael Pena's IMDb page? Because you should sometime, because the breadth of things that he's done in his career is quite impressive, and now he's a NASA scientist, so good on you, sir. Although I mentioned Kate Mara, and I want to stress that what I'm about to say isn't a knock on Kate Mara. It's more a knock on the scripts that she's been given, and maybe it's the directing. You know, as much as I love Ridley Scott, maybe he's part of this too. I don't know. But that's two movies in a row I've seen this year where Kate Mara has a fairly prominent role in a sci-fi movie, yet she doesn't do anything. Fantastic Four, and now this. Both movies, she spends the majority of the runtime sitting in front of a computer wearing headsets. And, I mean, yeah, she's like the techie science computer girl. So, you know, they tend to spend a lot of time sitting in front of computers wearing headsets. But, like in Fantastic Four, she doesn't even go on the mission that gives everyone their powers. She just kind of hangs behind, and then stroke of luck or bad luck, whatever you want to call it, she somehow gets powers too, even though she didn't go to that place that gave everyone powers. And now in this one, she just kind of sits in front of a computer and spouts science gobbledygook. I'm pretty sure with both of these movies, you could essentially edit her character out and then just throw random sound bites and things like that back into the movie, and nothing would change. It's still the same story, and that's a bit of a problem. Like, I want to form an opinion on this actress. She seems talented. She seems like she has potential, but she hasn't done enough in any of her movies for me to be able to form an opinion on her, and that's not on her. That's not her fault. These movies keep giving her nothing to do. Like, she was in Iron Man 2, apparently. I don't remember her from that. What did she do? I don't know. I've seen that movie several times, and I do not remember her. I barely remember her from Fantastic Four, and she played the Invisible Woman. Again, it's not on her. I mean, yeah, that wig she had was terrible, but, you know, that's not her fault that the script and the directors and everybody don't give her anything to do. I'm just befuddled by this. Anyway, Hollywood, give Kate Mara something to do if you're going to keep casting her and stuff. But for the rest of the cast is really good, and Kate Mara is good too. She just doesn't do anything. And it's not her that's not doing anything, it's the script. But Matt Damon really carries this movie, getting away from all that. And it's pretty impressive. If I do have like one actual legitimate complaint that's not just like a logistical thing about a character maybe not doing anything or not doing anything. Anyway, I wish that the Matt Damon segments have been more in silence than they were. I mean, the voiceover like narration stuff wasn't terrible. Actually, it was very well handled. But I just felt like there were moments where I was watching it where it's like the visual is enough for me. I get what's going on. I don't need the narration kind of hammering at home. But again, that's a minor complaint, because this is a great movie. But that's also the problem with reviewing great movies. Like, what do I talk about? Do I talk about the story? I've already done that. I've already said that it's, a fairly standard, run-of-the-mill sci-fi disaster movie. And so there are certain beats that it's got to hit, and hits them quite well. And if I go into too many details, I start getting into spoilers, which I don't want to do. And there's even like a character that I really want to talk about, Donald Glover's character, who comes in kind of halfway through the second act. And not halfway through the movie, kind of halfway through the second act. I'll explain the difference in a minute here. And I don't really want to give away who he is or what he does, but he's a great character, and he plays the character really well. But what he does is a spoiler, so that's an issue there. So Donald Glover is awesome playing this kooky science character, but what he does, you'll have to see with yourself when you see the movie. And now, what I said a second ago about the halfway point of the second act, not the movie. I say that because the first act for this movie is so short. It's beautiful. It's very to the point. No fluffing around. No unnecessarily long exposition dumps. No exposition dumps at all. It just, here's some characters on Mars. They're doing some stuff. Shit goes wrong. They gotta leave. Someone gets left behind. First act over. That's how it should be. I mean, I know, with some stories, you need to get a lot of information out as quickly as you can. But it's also really nice to see a movie be brave enough to be like, you know what? We can just knock all this out of the park in 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're good to go for the story. We don't need to do anything else. It's fairly beautiful. And I respect the hell out of Ridley Scott for going for it. And to whoever wrote this movie, I don't know it off the top of my head, but to whoever wrote the script, thank you for doing that. It was very appreciative. It's so awesome. Because when you get the minutia out of the way in the first 5 to 10 minutes, and you jump into the story proper, which is usually the second act with, films that follow the 3-act structure, that leaves more time to really let us get to know the characters, get to know the situation, really feel the gravity of the movie, of what is happening, and really give you a whole bunch of different characters to follow. Because there's a lot of characters in this movie. If my list of actors didn't give that away, this movie has a huge cast. There's all the people at NASA. There's the people at JPL. There's the people on the craft that left Matt Damon behind. There's Matt Damon. That's a lot of different disparate groups, and it's a tricky juggling act to get them all in there. And again, if we're being honest, I'm going to nitpick here. I wish we had spent some more time with the crew that left him behind. That would have been great to see them up in space on the ship, reacting to the fact that they just left this guy behind. I think that would have been good. But again, that's just a nitpick, because we see the characters enough to get enough of a sense of them, except for Kate Mara, who does nothing. God, just give her something to do, somebody. But it would have been nice to just to spend more time with them all together. There's the German guy, who I can only remember as the German guy, and I don't mean that racist. It's just I didn't catch his name because we didn't spend enough time with him. I barely caught Kate Mara's name, only because of a couple of jokes, and then they referenced it later. I'm like, oh, so that's who they were joking about. But that's it. There's Michael Pena, who's awesome, so I remember him, and then there's Jessica Chastain, who's awesome, so I remember her. And by the way, it's kind of funny, right, that Interstellar had Jessica Chastain and Matt Damon, and now The Martian has Jessica Chastain and Matt Damon, and in Interstellar, Matt Damon's left behind on a planet, and people need to come and rescue him, and now in The Martian, Matt Damon is left behind on a planet, and people need to come and rescue him. That's just a funny coincidence to me. But I could sit here and nitpick little things. Parts of the science are a little iffy. There's also a lot of parts where I'm like, wow, that feels genuine. That really feels like that's what you would need to do in order to survive in this situation. But towards the end, it gets a little iffy, but there's also a lot of action. There's also a lot of great suspense. There's a lot of gobbledygook thrown around about sciencey things, but it's simplified to the point where you get the basis of what they're saying, so you understand the tension, which is kind of an accomplishment. Medical shows are kind of iffy for me, like House and things like that, because I like the characters, I like the stories usually, but when they start throwing around different medical terminologyisms and things, it's kind of hard to follow. Wait, is this brain? Is this lung? Is this liver? Cancer? AIDS? Diabetes? What is it? And the same thing can happen with this movie. It's wait, trajectories, meters, oh my god, I'm American, I don't follow this crap. But they do it so well, and maybe that's them trying to appeal to as a wide of an audience as they can. It probably is, but it's done very well, and that's the same for everything else in this movie. And another thing that's done really well that I think is, there to try and promote this movie to a wider audience is, I'm not going to say what they do, but China comes into the picture at one point, and they are a great set of characters that do some great things and have a nice little story that just kind of fits in perfectly with everything else that's happening. Because that's really what this movie ends up being about, is teamwork and what we can accomplish when we just work hard towards a certain goal. When it's all about hope. It's all about overcoming obstacles that seem impossible. This is a very inspiring movie, and it never really gets into the cheesy territory. And I even cried a couple of moments because it was really emotional and it was really intense, and you really felt for this guy that was trapped on this planet, and you understood the plight of NASA and JPL, of what they need to go through in order to get this guy back. Because that's another thing that this movie actually did quite well, was dealing with like NASA having to have a certain public image in order to get the funds or the support that they need to do the things that they need to do, because their work is important, especially when it comes to saving this guy, and what it could mean if they do things this way, what it can mean if they do things this way. It's a nice little twist on like a political drama, like as turning NASA into sort of like a business in a way, if that's a good way to say it. It's a very complicated thing, but it's very well handled because this movie is fucking amazing. So yeah, that's it. You know what? I've been going on for 12 minutes now, basically. This movie is awesome, even though this review is going out super late. If you haven't seen it, for some reason, fix that. Go see it. This movie is really, really good. And I will see you guys next time with Pan, which I hope can be my 4th good movie in a row, but we'll see. But one more thing before I go. I am still doing a Q&A video. So if there's any questions you guys have for me, anything at all you want to ask me, throw it in the comments and maybe I'll answer it in that little video. Or maybe I won't. But you won't know unless you leave the questions. So I'm Lindsay and I'm out. Peace.